Good evening, everyone. I hope you got your beers on because it's beer o'clock on beer night. So, shall we do this? Do you think? What do you reckon, Rich? Are you ready for a beer tonight?
Definitely need this beer tonight.
Oh, well, that's good then, because we've got beer tonight. I hope you're all holding a that way a bit, London Pride. Because tonight, it says amber ale on the bottle. Since when's it been an amber ale? I'm sure it was down as a best bitter at one point. But yeah, we're going to judge it as a best bitter. So, who's in the house tonight? Hey, Stu H. Matt Cliff, Rich Swindles, Eugene, Dan. Loving the new screen setup. Have we changed the screen setup much?
It's only from the week before last when we had the problem with the.
Yeah, that's right. We did. We had issue with the thing, didn't we? The super sauce they call it wasn't working, but that's working tonight. So anyway, hello everyone. This week we have got a couple of things to chat about before we get into the beer, but we're not going to keep you waiting too long for the beer. We know that's why you're here. Just to get us started, I want you to be aware we're having some issues scheduling exams in Europe at the moment, or to be more precise, probably the entirety of the world outside of the US. There's been a decision taken that we're not allowed to use any proctors who are less than national rank, and at the moment in the UK we've only got two, so we're not able to put an exam on without someone travelling internationally, and at the moment, as we all know, that's a bit of an issue. So we'll keep you in touch with that. We are still hoping to run the London exam in October, but obviously that will all depend on government restrictions, travel, the whole 9 yards. But keep an eye out and we'll let you know. Omar and me are trying to bring it together. Unfortunately, Lee's had to pull out from doing it, and maybe more on that on another stream or another occasion. So anyway, Rich, you had a couple of things you thought you would be a good idea to chat about?
Yeah, no, I think mostly these are things that will come out as we get into tasting this particular beer. There's some areas of tasting, particularly around the flavour, that this sort of beer is particularly interesting to think about. So I suggest we get on with the beer.
Works for me. Let's do this then.
I see a few people have cracked them open already. That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. I don't blame them. So if you crack them open already, get your nose straight in there. We want to talk about the aroma. So we are looking for a low to moderate malt aroma, often but not always, with a low to medium low caramel quality. Bready, biscuit or lightly toasted malt complexity is common. There'll be mild to moderate fruitiness, and the hop aroma can range from moderate to none. Typically floral, earthy, resiny and or fruity if it's present. Generally no diacetyl, although low levels are allowed. So straight into the chat, folks. Tell us what you're getting on this before we say what we're getting. We don't want to influence you too much. Oh, I haven't had one of these for a while, actually.
Yeah, I think I've had them since they've been in these bottles, but not very many.
So from Yorkshire Peacocks, we have definite caramel and toffee, a hint of lemon in the background, digestive biscuit, and a sweet smell.
Yeah, I could agree with all of that. So anything further on sweets? Sweets are the interesting descriptor. Matt says he's a cold from the fridge.
Yeah, Nick, so London Pride it is. Sorry. So what was that? Matt saying cold from the fridge?
It's a bit cold, I think. It smells really fruity. But yeah, it's definitely fruity. You know, try and pick out a particular fruit.
Yeah, even once it's warmed up a bit, there's still, I think it's safe to say there's still some fruit there.
Mm-hmm. A nutty wafer biscuit type thing. That's quite specific. Orange marmalade from Dan. Yeah, I could definitely go with orange.
Spellers coming
Yeah,
up
I've
with
even with I think
digestive.
so. Yeah, Seville orange, which is the marmalady ones.
Yeah, so a lot of people with the orange. Digestives is coming up quite a few times. Speller put digestives up as well. So Reese is saying peach and caramel and a low toffee. Interesting one from Stu. Werther's Original, which is
It's
butterscotch,
butterscotch,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is butterscotch. Which would be a classic descriptor of diacetyl. I'm not really getting it, though some low levels are allowed in this sort of style.
I thought I got a little whiff of it very lightly when I first opened it. The classic test to double check is to warm it up as much as possible and see if it becomes more prominent. But then again, I wouldn't suggest doing that until the end, because obviously you've got to enjoy everything else about the beer first.
I think, Dan's agreed on the buttery on the first pour and the touch of spiciness.
Yeah, so yeah, I'd agree then. Definitely, I did get a hint of it as well. It doesn't seem as prominent now, but certainly on the first pour. So we're having some really great descriptors coming in. A lot of people agreeing with the oranges. Rob or Robert, I'm never sure which one it is, Rob, so please forgive me. Just pop down in chat if you prefer Rob or Robert. Slight red apple esters, orange marmalade from the hop, caramel fudgy malt, and slight diacetyl. Yeah. Yeah, so quite a few people getting some diacetyl off it. And again, it is actually allowed in this style, as long as it's not too much, too prominent. Because too prominent is an off flavour in every style, but some is allowed in this one.
Yeah, I think the description on this one is very low levels, and some of them I think it goes to low.
Yeah. So again from Eugene, little hop aroma.
Yeah. Is anyone getting anything almost into floral from on the hop aroma? It's one I occasionally pulled out on this beer or this style.
I'm not personally getting floral.
Yeah, it's another low one.
But it is, the hop aromas aren't that prominent, so it could well be one of them.
Yeah, Alan's saying he's getting earthy, not floral.
I mean, I always have a trouble with hop aroma at the very low levels, trying to differentiate between them.
Yeah, there's particularly the more fruity ones can be difficult to separate from fermentation esters at times.
Yeah. A nice comment from Dan there. Everyone's bringing the big guns tonight. Good lengthy descriptors. And yeah, it's good to see. So, what were we looking for again? Mild to moderate fruitiness. A lot of people have described fruitiness. Not many people have put a level on it. But I'd say, yeah, we're getting some moderate. Hop aroma, I'm not really getting anything. It's quite low for me. Slightly earthy. Maybe perhaps a tiny little bit of resin in the background. Some diacetyl. Getting for me, I'm getting like a moderate caramel and toffee type of aroma going on as well from the malt. So if anyone is getting any of that, I think you're doing well.
Yeah, that's what I agree. The core for me is caramel and digestive biscuit with the oranges. and maybe a touch of lime, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't have called it out as lime until you said, but yeah, now I can see that. And Dan's made a very good point there. If it'll come up on the software. He says that levels were the trickiest thing for him to get his head around and to understand some baselines on. And I think that's a very valid point. It takes some drinking to get used to what is a low level, what is a moderate level, and what is a high. And then it takes a fair bit more to get used to what's a moderate low and a moderate high.
Yeah, so it's filling in those gaps. I mean, often it's, to start with, it's worth finding some examples that are definitely high, which rather just get a good punchy stout and get real high roasts in, get some of the older Americans for the high bitter and the high hops, high American IPAs. High pure malt, maybe a barley wine of some kind, something like that.
Yeah. And some of the wee heavies, things like that, can be very good for high malt. Message for the wife, Sarah said I had to do more drinking. I deny all knowledge of that statement. After all, you have said you've got your head around the levels now, so I'm not going to take the blame for that one, Dan. Okay, so on a score then, let's have a look. Aroma, we're scoring it out of 12 points. We've talked about the malt, the hops. We haven't really talked about esters. Anyone getting any of the fruity esters from yeast fermentation? But otherwise, I think we just go straight for it and get on with scoring, because I'm not.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get your scores in now. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, while people are putting the scores in, it's the thing is whether the orangey notes here are hop or are they fermentation derived.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell at those low levels.
Yeah.
Alan says none for him. I guess that's the esters, not the score. Okay. So as they're coming in, I'm just working out roughly where I want to put it based on that. And the one thing you will often see me doing, well, you can guess I'm doing, is looking up at the style guide and just reviewing it again before I give it a score. Quite often you'll see judges sit down at a table, start a new flight off for a new style and not even quickly glance at the style guide. I always recommend you reread the style guide before you sit down and judge a flight.
Yeah, you'll notice me looking over there. That's where my copy of the style guide is.
Yeah, mine's up there.
Yeah.
Which for you folks is in the middle of the screen.
So we've got an 8 saying it's a bit too subtle, perhaps. A couple of 9s. Yeah, I think that's an interesting call. Caramel aromas being a little bit too high for the style. I could see that. I certainly think they're at a sort of medium level rather than medium low, but it's sort of on the edge.
Yeah, it's pushing it, isn't it? It's a fair comment, I think.
Yeah.
So we're mainly looking at 9s then.
Yeah.
9 pretty neutral. 9 too high. 9. And a nice comment from Stu H there. It's an evolving beer. It's oxidizing and or changing as it mellows, which is again a very valid point. As you open it, times change and the beer changes. So yeah, just for a behind the scenes look. There we go. There's my style guide up there. And you're all by there. So yeah, I'd say 9's perfectly reasonable for this. Could do with more bread, biscuit, and less caramel fruit to balance from Reese. And from Dan, we've got a 10, only docking points for the stronger caramel aroma with lessened glass. Yeah, I think they're all very valid points. 9, 10.
Yeah, 8, 9, 10 seems a valid sort of range for this, to me.
Yeah, I'd agree. And again, as we've said in the past, we do have to allow for some bottle variation here as well. Your scores might be more in line with everyone else if you were sat across the table from them. Sarah's doing a moon landing. It feels like it, just making sure everything's working before we go live. But I'm terrible. I'm one of these people that doesn't like having things just in a tiny little corner of the screen. It's full screen or nothing for me. And for me to be able to display it to you, the ATEM likes everything as a full screen source. Okay, interesting one from James. Just come in before we move on. Pink peppercorn aroma just now.
Yeah, I've definitely got some pepperiness in this. I think I think I can take pink peppercorns. I'll just put down normal little peppery spice.
Yeah, I mean, peppery. There's definitely pepperiness there. I probably haven't tried pink peppercorns enough. The only time I tried them, they were in one of those grinders with pink peppercorns, white peppercorns, and black peppercorns. So you weren't sure what was coming from what. But it does sound good to me. Okay, so shall we talk about the appearance then? Obviously, we've got no head now. We've poured the beer a while back. Good to brilliant clarity. Well, I can read the screen through it, so yeah. A low to moderate white to off-white head. May have very little head due to low carbonation. Well, it's definitely got very little now. It did pour with some for me.
It poured with a decent head for me. I think this may be a point about the varying levels of carbonation between bottled and draft versions. Because most of the bottled ones you get, especially the commercial examples, have at least some carbonation in them. My one poured with a pretty decent head initially that faded fairly slowly. So
yeah, it certainly hung about. I mean, we opened them 15 minutes ago now, so so yeah. Anyone got anything they want to knock it for on appearance? Colour, pale amber to medium coppers allowed. That is so clear. Okay, so
what do people think? What sort of descriptors will people put to that colour? It's probably interesting for a second.
Yeah, definitely, because
it's quite a hard one to understand. What words you can put to what colours?
And Stu hates just giving it a 10 for appearance is out of 3, Stu. I was about to say he's just giving it a 10 for aroma, and then it's like, oh no, hang on, he says appearance. Tree sap.
Interesting.
That's not what I would have considered. Which tree are we thinking here? Okay, amber, copper. Amber for Keith Bailey.
Yeah, pale copper. Yeah, I could go with those.
And straight up copper from Eugene. Yeah, I mean they all seem valid enough to me. I mean you get a brand new bit of copper pipe. I can see that. Amber copper. Yeah, I mean they do describe it on the bottle as an amber. Golden syrup from David Farron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. We've had a fair bit of it in the house recently because my boys started liking pancakes again, so we got squeezy bottles of golden syrup. And it's pretty much bang on, so that's a great description. Perfect deep honey colour, brilliant clarity. Another one saying tree sap from Yorkshire Pancake. Oh, amber. Fossilized tree sap, you mean?
Ah,
Amber.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a mellow Lucozade original.
Yeah, I wouldn't write that into to an exam score sheet because yeah, I don't know how far Lucozade goes internationally.
Well, I mean, as long as it goes as far as the proctors, you'll probably be fine. But yeah, I don't think many proctors would put Lucozade down as a colour description.
No.
Impressive clarity, light russet colour. Okay, so scores for appearance then. 1, 2, or 3 points. What are folks thinking there? The one thing I do notice, I didn't see anyone comment on the retention, colour or texture of the head, which is one of the things we are supposed to call out in the sheet. So nearly everyone's coming in with 3s there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. This is full marks all the way for appearance. Reese wants to dock it, though, for the disappearing head.
Yeah. The head on my one lasted reasonably well. It wasn't like a wheat beer that will just sit there. But it lasted a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. I mean, David's called out a good point there. No lacing, which is always good to mention what's not there as well as what is there. So that's a good point to put into your exam sheets or descriptors, what you do get and what you don't get. Couldn't talk about texture because there was so little. For me, it poured a moderate white head with loose medium-sized foam, which quickly diminished.
Yeah, mine faded a bit more slowly. Similar wording. Yeah, moderate whitehead, fine to medium bubbles that slowly fade to ring and film. And mine actually did leave a fair bit of lacing as it went down.
Nice. And a good one from Richard there as well. Moderate, brilliant whitehead, moderate persistence, head made up of different size bubbles. In this case, I will say that moderate is the right descriptor to use. Just be careful not to overuse it because it is quite common, especially in newer judges, where you go for that middle safe ground and call everything moderate. So that's just something to be aware of as you go on. I'm not saying that is the case here, Richard. They are perfectly good descriptors for the beer we had in this instance, but it's just something for everyone to be aware of with other beers at other times. Right, so yeah, it was definitely a 3 all the way. Let's get the beer down your laughing hole then. Cheers. Okay, so flavour. Medium to moderately high bitterness. Is that what folks are getting? You write your descriptors, what you'll put on the score sheet in the chat, and I'll read out what the style guide says we should be expecting. So medium to moderately high bitterness, a moderately low to moderately high fruity esters, moderate to low hop flavour, typically with earthy, resiny, fruity and or a floral character. Low to medium maltiness with a dry finish. Malt profile is typically bready, biscuity or lightly toasty. Low to moderate caramel or toffee flavours are optional. So note here, they're optional. It's not a required characteristic of this style. It could have absolutely no toffee or caramel flavours and still be in style because they are optional. Balance is often decidedly bitter, although the bitterness should not completely overpower the malt flavour, esters and hop flavour. Generally no diacetyl, although very low levels are allowed. So a light burnt caramel with a mellow bitterness and a little orange twang.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Dan's getting more of the toasty character on the flavour, which is interesting.
So yeah, just a reminder that for the flavour, we should be talking about the malt, the hops, the fermentation characteristics, the balance, the finish, aftertaste, and or any other flavour characteristics. So
the thing I think it might be interesting for us to think about while with this beer is while you're focusing on getting your descriptors out and down for the beer, focus a little bit more on balance and on the finish and aftertaste. This sort of style of beer is the balance is going to be quite interesting. I'll be interested to see what people's opinions and descriptions are.
So Yorkshire Peacock's in there with Belvita breakfast biscuits. Not one I've tried, so I can't tell you if I agree or not on there. But some butterscotch flavour, a very low bitterness, some subtle citrus notes, possibly orange, lots of sweet malty flavours. Where are you finding those malty flavours taking you, Yorkshire Peacocks? Is it bready, biscuity, toasty? How would you describe those malt flavours? Alan says caramel and toffee dominates as with the aroma. Earthy and slightly resinous hops are moderate. A firm bitterness that feels synthetic.
Yeah, we're getting people quite all over the range here on the bitterness.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Interesting call out from James Sanford there. It's almost minerally. I know, sort of, especially when I first started, minerally was about as far as I could go. But can you think maybe what minerally it could be? Are we talking it's sulphurous or salty or chalky or... Okay, so medium bitterness, high orange esters which build and slightly overwhelm other flavours, which include lightly toasted bread, malt and caramel, more of a sweet than dry finish.
First we've got there, we've got toasted bread crust in the malt. Yeah, that's a reasonably sensible descriptor. If you can go with, is it white bread, is it brown bread? I in the end went with breakfast muffins because we've been having them for breakfast recently. So they're in my head as a flavour. That's another one of those cases, if you're doing an exam one that's going to be sent to the Americans and you use muffin, tell them it's the English one or the American one, not the sweet one or the savoury one. We've got some low green apple esters, which is interesting. Green apple is not often used as an ester descriptor. The apple esters tend to be more red or cooked. But there are some that can go green that aren't just acetaldehyde.
Yeah, I haven't had that one come through yet, so I can't highlight that one. But yeah. Agreed. Normally it's warmer, sweeter, appley flavours that are not acetaldehyde. Quite sweet with toffee and caramel coming through early. Yeah, it's always a good idea to think about that. Where the flavours develop, are they as soon as you eat it, as soon as you drink it, or are they after you swallow? This will be a note that nobody else will get. The dryness is like you get from acid phosphate in some more classic sodas.
Yep, that is an obscure reference.
I don't think I've ever had...
No. I wouldn't know what
any of
that
those
came
sodas.
across as, but it's an interesting one.
It is, and
Um,
it's all. That's what I love about sessions like this. You learn more from the people that are involved with you doing it than you do from doing it yourself. For me, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I did an off flavour session with a group of judges in Cardiff. Reese was there, and we got to acetaldehyde, and I'm like, the classic descriptors for this green apple. And people tried it, and someone said, actually, what I'm getting is freshly wind-fallen apples that have been run over by a lawnmower. And that has just stuck with me, because to me, that is a better descriptor for it than green apples. So, yeah, you really do learn so much from watching what other people are commenting and saying.
Yeah. A couple of people tried pulling out saltiness, which is an interesting idea.
Yep. Yeah, I do get a little saltiness. Tom says salty for me. Rich, I get saltiness apples. Now it's been mentioned.
Yeah, I can see what people are saying at sort of towards the end.
Yeah, and earlier on there was a comment about almost synthetic bitterness, I think, synthetic dryness, and I'm certainly getting that in the finish of it. It's just that little bit, slight bit too harsh, as if there's something not quite right. Crisp apple flavour, fair enough. And yes, as everyone's saying, it is a great beer to have out of cask or on a beer engine instead of in bottle. Unfortunately, most of us can't get a cask of it home.
You pick one up from the supermarket, I wish.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the closest you'd probably be able to get is a 5-litre mini keg, which would still have the same carbonation.
Still the same stuff, yeah.
Okay, so I think we've done a lot of descriptors. There's been some really good ones. There's been some ranges that people have mentioned, some without ranges. So I think it might be an idea if we go on and score it, because I'd like to spend more time on overall impression for this beer. So you've got 20 points. Was this a world-class example of the style? Did it exemplify it well?
On the flavour to start with, so let's go.
Yes, definitely on the flavour, but yeah, if it's a world-class example of the style for the flavour, it should be 20 points. Bang on every time. If you think it's mostly there, nothing really wrong, you're probably looking 17, 18, some tweaking, and then down from there. Obviously, if you think it's completely out of style, then depending if you believe in courtesy points, it can be anywhere from 0 to 7 or 8.
Yeah, I agree with David. He says having this as a pint next to the brewery or near the brewery is really nice. Yeah, I was brought up in South London, so it was fairly local for me.
Nice.
I think it was the best of the local beers when I was younger.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those styles where it is best drunk in a pub, off cask, and if you can get it close to the brewery, even better. How did you find that out? I'm not sure who Rich is asking what there. Bitterness seems to be increasing as Reese drinks more of it. So yeah, so far we're seeing things like 19. I would like to see better balance between bitter and sweet. Pretty close, so an 18 for me, says Richard. 17 from Tom, slightly high fruity esters and a touch too sweet on the finish. 17, it's all in style, but it's not a wow. And I think that's a very valid comment. Normally, I'd suggest pushing the wow factor into overall impression, because if it ticks all the things that should be in the flavour, it should get full marks even for flavour, even if it doesn't wow you. I know I keep coming back to it because that day sticks in my mind. I had, I think it was 12 American Ambers in a row at one point in one flight for the UK National. And yeah, it was very much that they were on point for flavour, but none of them were a wow. So they got good marks for flavour and a lot lower for overall impression.
We've got a couple of people, I think it's James and Reese on 15. I think they're mostly commenting about, the balance between the bitterness and the sweetness. I think I'd agree that the balance is somewhat out for what I'd expect for this style. I'm not sure it's 5 points out, but definitely, I think the descriptor balance is often decidedly bitter. So the bitter should not completely overpower the malt flavour, etc. I think it misses that.
Yeah, I think so too. For me, we've seen a lot of folks coming in now, so I'm quite happy to give it my score. Did you want to score it first, Rich, instead of me doing it?
Oh, the scores from us. Yeah, I was on a 17, so I think I agree with most people here pretty much. It's the balance is the main thing I've been commenting on here. It's a sort of even balance between bitterness and sweetness. It doesn't really balance. The bitterness isn't really quite enough for the level of sweetness.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was 15, 16-ish, definitely in that range. It's, again, the balance is off. The malt profile's mostly there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you've got 16, 17, 18, you're definitely in the right ballpark. If you've got one either side, then I think we may be looking at perhaps some slight bottle variation or over-eager murking one way or the other. I think that's safe to say.
The judges do mark differently, and even in competitions, you'll see pairs marking differently, which is why we tend to do mini best of shows and bring together the best from each pair, whatever their scores are. You don't bring in the top 6 top scoring beers. You bring in 3 from each pair, just because there will be variation in how they score.
Yeah, especially later on where they've calibrated against each other. You'll find that sort of scores may drift more between 2 different pairs once everyone's got their scoring in line with each other in their pairs. So yeah, I mean, quite often we'll have in mini boss we'll have like a 40 and a 36, and the 36 actually gets put into the boss instead of the 40. So it's definitely a possibility. Okay. Supermarket beer comment from Dan. I missed the previous one. But yeah, we like supermarket beers for this live stream. It doesn't mean that that's our first choice always, but it certainly helps the beer be available to everyone. Right, okay, so mouthfeel, 5 points. We're going to move fairly quickly on mouthfeel because there's not an awful lot of points for it, and I want to spend more time on overall impression this week. So we're expecting a medium light to medium body, a low carbonation, although bottled examples can have moderate carbonation. So this is one of these ones where, quite honestly, I don't think the style guideline does the beer justice. We're told that we should be expected to comment on the body, the carbonation, warmth or lack of it, creaminess, astringency, and any other palate sensations. So if something should not be allowed in this style and it's not one of the definitive off flavors or off characteristics, it should really be mentioned in the style guide as well.
Yeah, so some of these mouthfeel ones can get a bit light. They tend not to have the no X and no Ys in them. So usually you wouldn't expect astringency or warmth, unless specifically mentioned. Creaminess is an interesting one because it does turn up a bit more. But yeah, the assumption is no warmth or astringency, and probably creaminess as well.
I mean, I'll be interested to see what people say about warmth on this one, if anyone's getting any. Dan's agreeing with the dry finish. It keeps him sipping. He is on bottle 2, so it's built up a bit. And he's still going to use me as the reason he needs to drink more. There's times I'm quite glad I don't get to meet everyone's partners. I'm sure I'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, does anyone want to put down for mouthfeel, with their thoughts and scores at the same time, probably?
Yeah, that probably makes sense. That way we can keep it moving. Eugene says, when you talk about balance, are you talking bitterness, alcohol level, or sweetness? There's 2 different main balances we talk about. There's the balance between malt and hops, and then there's sweetness, dryness, and bitterness, and how they balance together. Did you want to add anything to that, Rich? That's the way I look at it for balances. I think of it as 2 different ones in different sections.
Yeah, I think so. I think with this one, you're more talking about the sweet bitter balance here, or malt less than the malt character, hop character. But they're related, but they are separate. It's interesting. We have a few people calling fairly low carbonation on their examples.
Yeah, I was just seeing that one from Reese, and I thought, oh, that's going to put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah.
I'd honestly welcome a bit more carbonation. I know it's low, but a smidge more might lift it from being a bit flat tasting. And frankly, yes, for a bottled beer, I kind of agree. Perhaps a little bit more carbonation. It's at that funny level where it's too high to be cask, but not really high enough to be bottle. Richard has nailed it for me. So where's Richard's? That one there, I'm guessing.
That one, medium light body, light carbonation, syrupy feel in the middle of the tongue, which is a nice description.
Yeah.
Then it attenuates and dries off. But like what will your spicy feel as it passes over the rear of your tongue? Yeah, possibly. Yeah. How much of that is flavour and how much of that is mouthfeel is an interesting choice.
Okay, so we're seeing mainly 4s. We have got a 3 from Alison. Too thin and overly astringent. Anyone else getting astringency?
One thing I did notice with this, because I started the bottle a bit earlier just to write some quick notes down, was the carbonation was a lot higher about half an hour ago.
Yeah.
So the fact we're taking our time over it means the carbonation has probably dropped a touch since we opened it.
Let's go for a fresh pour and see. So actually, looking at that now, I'd say that's slightly off-white, but it could just be in this light.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying theirs are quite flat now.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit more carbonation there on a fresh pour.
Yeah.
Sarah requesting the other bottle. Yeah, good shout there, James.
One thing you will find when doing homebrew, especially competition homebrews that have been posted around the country, as opposed to commercial beer, is that low carbonation can get very low occasionally, where someone's had a problem with bottling or the pressure has leaked out because their cap's not on quite right. That they're usually a precursor of other flaws, but sometimes you will just get an example that's actually quite a nice beer, but it's completely flat, which ruins it in so many other ways, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does, because that totally flat beer, that straight away the body seems to go up, the
Yeah.
flavours aren't as pronounced, the aroma's all muted. So it does hit it in every single section, basically, if you get the carbonation out. But yeah, I mean, that's the most common one I've seen, is capping issues causing it.
Yeah.
Either Cooper's type PET bottles where the cap hasn't been cranked down with a wrench or a vice. Or maybe they've used a whack-it capper or a butterfly capper and got it just slightly cocked so that the beer didn't leak out, but all the pressure did.
Yeah, sometimes when you get those Cooper's bottles and people have done them up really tight, you need the wrench and the competition to get back into it.
Yeah, I'll have to remember to take
not among my usual beer tasting toolkit, a sort of wrench for opening bottles.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to remember to start taking one though, because we are seeing more PET bottles turn up at competitions. We're also seeing the crown capped PET ones turning up now quite often as well.
Yeah, I think they come from someone like Keg Kingdom. I think it's one of those places I think does those. A couple turned up in the competition I was judging a few weeks back, and I was asking where they were from.
Yeah, there's a couple of suppliers, if I remember right. The thing to bear in mind with those is they will only work with a butterfly capper. If you try and do them in a bench capper, the bottle will just crush.
Yeah.
And if you try to do it with a whack-on capper, the old type,
you make a terrible
hammer.
Mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the ones in the competition notably had dints in them where someone tried to grip them with the butterfly capper and they just like twisted it. I mean, the reason I'm interested in this, I tend to like bottling in 330s, and plastic they're the only plastic 330s you can get.
Makes sense. Right, talking of that though, when we say you're judging toolkit, one thing to bear in mind is normally if you go to a BJCP style competition, everything is there for you. So you'll generally get score sheets, glasses, pencils, erasers, everything like that will be there for you. If you get invited along to a guild competition, you are expected to take everything. So you will need glasses, tea towel, you'll need a pen or pencil or something. You'll need your own slops bucket even. So most guild judges or people who judge guild events have just got a judging kit. They keep an old fermenter with some glasses and everything in ready. So that's just one thing to bear in mind.
Yeah, I actually have this little box I usually take to competitions that has things like the colour card in it, a few spare pencils, and that's actually a printout of one of the flavour wheels in case I can't find a word. Because you're allowed reference material when judging, so I've just got one of those flavour wheels printed out in case I have a complete brain failure on what I'm actually tasting and need some inspiration.
For me, I just use the it's not going to focus because it's on manual focus. There's a BJCP Styles app, which is free on the app stores. That includes the Favour Wheel, the SRM Spectrum, the SRM Analyzer, which, to be honest, isn't worth doing. You're supposed to be able to point your camera at a beer and it'll tell you the SRM. It doesn't really work because, obviously, lighting and things like that. But then it's got every single style and the introductions, all the style guides there. So it's great for a quick recap of the style before you start judging a flight. Okay, so most people are like 3, 4, or 5. I'd say 4's about the average. Yeah, I could go 4. I wouldn't say you're wrong if you've done 1 point either way, though.
Yeah, I could go 4. I could go with all 5. It's just, there's nothing in my example that was particularly wrong.
Yeah.
Especially when I looked at things like the carbonation earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it was definitely very low carbonation at the end of the last bottle, but it's more in line at the start of the next one. So yeah. And when you're judging, you tend to get through a beer in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, so, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how chatty you are.
Yeah. All right, overall impression then. Let's let's knock this one out the park. This is where everyone gets to shine. Tell us your overall drinking pleasure associated with this beer and any suggestions for improvement. So again, the thing to bear in mind is we try not to make assumptions about process. So if you are going to give a process-based suggestion, normally either hedge it with this or that so that it's useful, or describe it in a way where the process is completely irrelevant and, for instance, increase bitterness or whatever like that. So then it is up to the person who brewed it to work out how they can do that using their process and methods. It's not for us to tell them that they have to brew it all grain or they have to brew a kit. So I really want to see folks' comments on this one because I want to know what they say about improving the beer. Because we've had a few folk who've knocked it a little bit. And I'm not saying they're wrong to have done so at all. It definitely didn't perfectly fit the style in every way. And this is another one. I've added one more beer to the list of beers we were going to do, which was requested last week, which I thought was a great suggestion. Where was it? So I'm just trying to find where my browser is hidden. Let's just do it up here.
While you're hunting, we've got a few comments in. So enjoyable to drink, bittersweet balanced beer. The balance towards bitterness would decrease the score. Slight impression of warmth suggests alcohol is towards the upper end of the style. Yeah, possibly. That seems plausible. And a session beer that's best drunk quickly to enjoy some continued carbonation. This is more continuing the description. I think maybe a little bit more on why you think it's what makes this beer good or bad, and what makes it not get 50. Basically, is what we're trying to say here.
So yeah, the beer I added was the Pilsner Urquell Czech Premium Pale Lager. So that will be on the 24th of June. So if there's any other styles people would like to cover, I'm quite happy to do a couple more at the end of this. I can't go too long because I know I'm away for the last week in July. So what date's that? So yeah, I'm away that last weekend in July, so I wouldn't be able to do one on the 29th there. But that doesn't mean that we can't add a couple more beers or keep it going and do something that's less to style maybe. Because sometimes you can learn quite a lot by judging a beer as out of style.
Yeah, that might be interesting. We pick something that's slightly, or even miss style of beer.
Yeah, something that's close, but not too close, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. Right, so what sort of comments have we had? No flaws, balance.
Yeah, Richard's comment, the balance of sweetness is attached too much to score better. If I can read the balance, improved balance with more assertive hop bitterness would improve the score.
Yep.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, a bit one-dimensional, could do with more bitterness and hop flavour. From Keith Bailey.
I think we see some people increasing the bitterness in. We have the opposite from Stew, a little more malty sweetness at the same time as reducing the bitterness.
Yeah. It would improve the mouthfeel and mouth finish. I think it might help with that one point, but I think it would take it further out of style for the other points. That's one thing to bear in mind. When you do put your comments in, they're judged against what the proctors have said. So if your feedback is to do something that would actually harm the beer in other areas, then you probably would get marked down for that. Because the feedback has to be in keeping with what's been described for the rest of the beer.
I think James's comment that they could revisit the recipe to allow hops to play a bigger role and what characters stand out. You could that's quite nice and general and allows the brewer to make some changes. You could possibly go a little more specific, but probably not by much.
Yeah. Yorkshire Peacocks. I'd increase the BU to GU ratio here to balance out the sweetness from the malt. More hops in the boil and more late additions for hop flavours. BU bitterness units. GU? I can't remember GU at the moment.
Gravity,
right. Yeah, I would avoid BUGU in brewer's feedback because it's not that commonly used in homebrew. Unless you're some of the more experienced ones where they'll know what you mean anyway if you said change balance, increase the bitterness.
Yeah, I mean, there's interesting the comments and thoughts people are putting down here is how much these are likely to push the beer more towards something like ESB, whatever that's called now. Strong bitter.
Yeah.
By increasing the flavours, you might just take it outside the range for this category.
Yes, if we look at 11.
Get ESB up as well. Let me open that window back up again.
If we just look at 11, if it finishes loading.
It'll be 11C, won't it?
Gosh, this dev site's slow. I thought they had fixed the scaling issues on this before taking it live, but I think it's still on the end of someone's home internet connection. Right, so 11A is your ordinary bitter, B is your best bitter, and C is your strong bitter.
Strong bitter.
So yeah, I wasn't imagining it. It is down there as a commercial example, so one of the exemplars for the style is Fuller's London Pride. So I'm glad to see I wasn't imagining it and misremembering it because they did describe it as an amber on the bottle.
Yeah, I think they changed the label when they changed the bottle.
Right.
I have a memory of there being some controversy about being called an amber ale.
Yeah, I mean, this does come back to what we've said before, that there's a definite variance between what brewers call beer styles and what style they actually are.
Yeah, I think.
But unless you're actually brewing it to enter it into a style-based competition, you can call it what the heck you like, so it really doesn't matter.
I think in this case, it's what the marketing department call it, as opposed to what the brewer calls it.
Yeah, I guess the theory is that calling it an amber takes it out of the boring brown bitter category and makes it more interesting for a more modern audience without taking it so far out that the old school will avoid it. Oh, apparently on Tom's bottle there's no style, it just says ale. So yeah, this is a style I've gotten. You can't see it because of focus, but down there it says Outstanding Amber Ale on my bottle.
Yeah, I think Richard's probably got the point that people don't like the word bitter anymore.
Yeah.
It's always been a little bit of a challenging term, especially to people who aren't used to it.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's right. And the sad fact is that bitter is a style that is very often overlooked for that reason, if nothing else. It's something, it was the beer I grew up with. It was what was on every beer. Whitbread best. So it was very much got lost in history for me, and I moved away from it. Right. So we're seeing some more scores coming in. A 7 for overall impression. The variation is part of it, maybe due to drinking a stout first. It's a nice, refreshing beer with a dry finish that makes you want to sip more. And I think it's always worth putting that in there. If it does make you want to drink more of it, that's a great way of describing your pleasure at drinking it.
Yeah, I think we said before, we've lost the sliders off the bottom of the check boxes off the bottom of most of the score sheets that used to say, I'll finish this sample, I'll finish a pint, give me the recipe.
Yeah.
Which are always quite nice to give your own personal feelings.
Yeah, and you can always write it into overall impression if you really like the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I've done that more than once. Unfortunately, no one's ever sent me the recipe.
Yeah.
Part of me as a competition organizer, for anyone who doesn't know, I organise the Welsh each year when it's running. I have toyed with the idea of not unticking the box that says you require the recipe when people submit beers. I've toyed with that because I think there would be a lot of interest in folk being able to see recipes for beers. But it's also right royal pain filling it in because of the way that software asks for the recipe.
Yeah.
So I haven't because of that mainly.
Yeah, if it was easy for people just to upload the recipe from their software.
Yeah, give us a beer XML file and job done. And to be honest,
they aren't great on some bits of it. I know I spent some time trying to update the format a year or so back. Yeah, that would be interesting to have because you've got the, I think it's the Ray Daniels book that's made out of old the winning recipes for a couple of years of US National.
You've literally taken the idea out of my head. I was about to say, I would love to be able to redo that because it is a stunning book, but very dated now.
Yeah.
And modern entries are not very similar to the historic ones. So it would be lovely to be able to do something like that. Right, so yeah, 7s, 8s. For you, Rich, where was it? What was it for overall impression?
For me, I'm on an 8. I think it's pretty close with a few issues. Yeah, mostly around the balance that we've raised before, both on aroma and on flavour.
Yep, that works for me. I'll probably be an 8 or a 7. For me, it just about came in under the excellent category overall, which is 38 to 44. It exemplifies the style well and requires minor fine-tuning. There weren't any flaws for me to knock it down into very good, but it certainly wasn't what I'll call a world-class example of the style. So, what are other people's thoughts overall? Where did it fit for you? Was it outstanding, excellent, very good, good? Hopefully no one's got fair or problematic for this one. So if
I like Dan's way of giving feedback. Overall impression, I'd like to give a shit sandwich. So the usual positive, a couple of improved, couple of negatives, and end with a positive.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's a good way of doing it. It makes sure... If you do have something like that, some sort of system in your mind, it makes sure that you remember to do the positive, the point for improvement, and also finish on a positive. For me, hang on. Yeah, allow that. So for me, it's very much a case of I try to aim for one thing at least to improve for every 5 points off of 50. It's just my own personal... If I can't think of anything, it's a good reason for me to reevaluate my score I've given it.
Yeah, it's a good ballpark way of starting to think about what you should be saying, is how bad the beer is. I mean, if it does have one massive critical flaw, like... for example, the entire thing is a chlorophenolic disaster area and you can't taste anything else, then yeah, it's hard to give it anything else. There's a couple of problems.
It is going to happen. You will get one.
Yeah. You're going to be hunting for your remaining 6 problems to get down to the score you want to give it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's certainly the case of if it's got major flaws or whatever, then I don't worry too much about that. But just in general, if there's nothing really wrong with it, it's just not to style,
Yeah.
then that's where I employ that process. So yeah, we've seen a, what was it, top of very good, 37 from Alan Osbiston. So yeah. I mean, what were your thoughts, Richard? Where should people be overall?
I'm going a bit higher than that because just my bottle was good. I'm probably about 41 in total. At least that's on my notes from quick sampling earlier, but that was a very quick run through of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's about what I think I'd be. I didn't sample it in advance and write notes, but from the scores I've given it whilst we've been talking, I certainly remember it being somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a 43, 44 for me, but equally I don't think it was a 38. So
yeah,
somewhere between there. I think you've done well on your scoring accuracy. 39 to 40 here. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the general scores are within your 7 points we normally aim to be within of each other.
Yep. "40 with my less than Johnny Ball mental math." Oh, Johnny Ball, what a name. It's quite scary when you hear all these names from the past and how many of them are dropping off now. I don't know if Johnny Ball has or not, but a lot of the others that were around at that time I know have. So, yeah.
Yeah, so back on the mental arithmetic, one of the things we're doing with the Zoom competitions is using the PDF score sheet that does the maths for you, which is really nice. I don't think usually one of the things the proctors do when they pick up your score sheet is check your addition, which is a really nice double check because my mental arithmetic still keeps going usually fairly well, but there have been cases of non-BJCP competitions where I've had so much beer I've been unable to add, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean,
and that was
me,
Brewdog's fault.
For me, it was even a BJCP one, but times have changed a lot now. Flights are normally a lot less intense, shall we say?
Yeah, so I think as we said before, we normally now do 2 flights in a day, maybe 3 for some competitions, whereas before we were 3 or 4 when there were less judges, and that was quite heavy.
And yeah, there's normally less beers a flight now. I remember.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time I ever judged the UK National. In one evening and the Saturday, I did over 54 beers.
Yeah.
By lunchtime on the Saturday, my knees were starting to go a bit. So yeah, luckily we don't see judging loads like that now. Obviously, if you are called in to do Best of Show, which is always a privilege and always a learning experience, then you will have a lot of beer in front of you, but you're not doing score sheets for everyone. You're literally just going, now, is that a better Pilsner than that is a Porter?
Yeah.
Reese adds up to 38.
Yeah.
He thinks that's about right. Yeah.
Feels in the right sort of region to me.
Yeah, he's certainly within 7 points of where I would have been. So I haven't seen anyone where the score is very far out from what I would have given it or what Richard would have given it. So I think everyone's doing pretty well on scoring accuracy, especially allowing for bottle variation and things like that where they've all been kept in completely different conditions. Okay, so I think that's it. Let me just check what is up next week. Open, close tab. I'm going to check because I said last week what I thought was up the next week and I was wrong. but I think I know what it is. Come on, come on, come on.
I believe I know what it is.
I'm pretty sure it's Theakston's.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Theakston's.
Yeah, which is a lovely drop as well, if you like that style. So yeah, it is Theakston's Old Peculiar next week. So hopefully you can grab one of them and join us next week. And again, let us know Imperial Stout next week.
Next week.
I have had a delivery today. Tiny Rebel have released Doom Night, a classic old school Impy Stout. So I have 4 of them turn up today.
Excellent.
But obviously it's not available in supermarkets, so yeah.
She was asking, where's everyone getting the Old Peculiar? Tesco usually have it.
Yeah, I got mine in Tesco's. They also had it in a co-op locally. I haven't checked Asda or Morrison for that one.
Apparently Sainsbury's also has it.
There you go.
So, yeah, try a variety of supermarkets. A lot of them should have it.
Yeah, I mean, I have literally tried to stick to the more common beers for this series. As much as I would love to do other beers, the main thing for me was all about making this accessible for people to join in without requiring A, a load of expense, or B, trips to special stores normally. Unfortunately, Stu's Sainsbury's didn't have it, so...
Yeah, try the next supermarket down the road.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll be in luck.
Yeah, unfortunately, like Dan was saying, Morrison's have Old Peculiar as well, Dan's just said. But yeah, okay. Dan was saying that there was an Impy Stout in Morrison's. Unfortunately, my Morrison's doesn't stock it, so I haven't been able to get it anyway. If anyone wants to send me a can, then I'm quite happy to do it, as long as it's available for most people. David Farron says, I've never tasted Old Peculiar, at least I don't think I have. He's looking forward to it.
So it's another beer that, while it's decent in bottle, is even better on cask.
Yeah. If anyone follows YouTubers, there was one a while back, Paul, time for another one, who's no longer with us, but rest his soul. It was his favourite beer. It's a lovely beer, so there you go. Oh, apparently the Impy Stout in Morrison's had hazelnut essence in it.
Yeah, I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Right, well, let's call it a day then, and hopefully see you next week. Feel free to message me on Facebook or Twitter if you've got any beer suggestions for us to add to the end of the list. We've done a lot of classic ones. We do have a New England IPA on the list, which is a bit more of a modern style, which will be done against a BJCP provisional style. But if you fancy doing something that is bang up to date and not an old classic, let me know. We'll see if we can find the beer, and we'll find a category to judge it under. Even if it doesn't exactly fit, like I said earlier, that might actually be a great experience judging something that isn't to style. Okay, thanks everyone, and I hope to see you all next time.
See you all later.